First contact and the dark warning. The red dust of Mars swirled around the excavation site as Dr. Sarah Chen carefully brushed away centuries of sediment from what appeared to be a metallic panel. The discovery of the underground complex had shocked the scientific community. Clear evidence of advanced engineering buried beneath the Martian surface. But what they found inside would change humanity's destiny forever. Dr. Chen, you need to see this. Marcus Rodriguez, her lead assistant, called from deeper within the chamber. His headlamp cut through the darkness, illuminating walls covered in intricate geometric patterns that seemed to pulse faintly under the light. Sarah made her way carefully through the narrow passage, her heart pounding with each step. After 3 months of excavation, they were finally reaching the central chamber. The patterns on the walls grew more complex, more urgent, as if trying to convey a message that had waited millennia to be heard. The chamber opened before them, a perfect dome carved from the Martian bedrock. In its center stood a crystalline structure, reaching toward the ceiling like a frozen fountain. But it was the hologram floating above it that drew their attention. A three-dimensional star map of the galaxy, with a pulsing red line cutting through space like a wound. It's some kind of warning beacon, Sarah breathed, her trained eye catching patterns in the alien script that rotated slowly around the projection. These symbols, they're similar to the ones we found in the outer chamber. But these are different. They're not just historical records. Marcus nodded, his face pale in the ethereal light. The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever's powering this, it's been running for thousands of years, waiting for someone to find it. Sarah approached the crystal, her hand hovering over its surface. The material seemed to respond to her presence, the hologram shifting and focusing on their solar system. A series of glyphs appeared, urgent and insistent. "Get me a direct link to mission control," she ordered, never taking her eyes off the display. "And tell them to wake up everyone. This can't wait." 12 hours later, Sarah stood before the United Earth Council, her discoveries laid bare on screens that surrounded the chamber. The faces of world leaders showed varying degrees of concern and skepticism as she explained what they'd found. The facility on Mars wasn't built by a dead civilization, she explained, her voice steadied despite the weight of her words. It was left as a warning by a species that called themselves the Meridians. They were part of a vast network of civilizations that faced extinction at the hands of something they called the Dominion. The holographic display showed the same star map from Mars, but now annotated with Earth's astronomical data. The red line that had caught their attention was a path that led directly to their solar system. The Dominion isn't a single species, Sarah continued. It's a collective of ancient civilizations that believe they have the right to determine which younger species are worthy of joining the galactic community. Those deemed unworthy are, she paused, choosing her words carefully, removed. "And how long do we have?" The question came from General Isabella Santos, her weathered face showing none of the doubt displayed by her colleagues. Sarah brought up a new set of calculations. Based on the warning beacon's data and our current observations, they'll reach the outer edge of our solar system in less than 6 months. The chamber erupted in voices, but General Santos raised her hand for silence. "Dr. Chen, you mentioned the Meridians left more than just a warning. Tell us about the defensive systems." Sarah nodded, bringing up schematics of technology far beyond current human understanding. The facility contains detailed blueprints for weapons, shields, and faster-than-light drives. The Meridians knew that whoever found their warning would need more than just information to survive. They left us tools, if we're smart enough to understand them in time. And are we? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. "We have to be," Sarah answered, "because the alternative is extinction." The Meridians weren't the only species to face the Dominion. They were just one of the few that managed to hide evidence of their existence before they disappeared. They scattered these facilities across the galaxy, hoping that other civilizations would find them in time to prepare. General Santos stood, her decision made before the others could begin their debates. "Dr. Chen, You have the full resources of the United Earth Defense Force at your disposal. I want every scientist, engineer, and researcher who can contribute working on this yesterday. We need those defensive systems operational before the Dominion arrives." As the council chamber emptied, Sarah found herself staring at the holographic display, at the red line that marked humanity's approaching judgment. She thought about all the species that had faced this moment before them, all those who had failed the Dominion's test of worthiness. But humanity had something those other species might not have had: time to prepare, and the knowledge left behind by those who came before. The Meridians hadn't just left them weapons, they'd left them hope. In the months that followed, humanity underwent the greatest technological revolution in its history. The Martian facilities database contained more than just weapons. It held the accumulated knowledge of a civilization that had fought the Dominion and lived to warn others. Every discovery led to breakthroughs in physics, engineering, and fields of science humanity hadn't even named yet. Sarah worked tirelessly with teams around the world, racing against time to understand and implement the Meridian technologies. The first successful shield test lit up the Nevada desert like a second sun. The prototype gravity drive turned the journey to Mars from months into hours. But it was the quantum communications array that changed everything. "We're picking up something," Marcus announced one evening, his eyes fixed on the array's output. "It's not the Dominion. The signature matches Meridian protocols." Sarah rushed to the console, her heart racing. The message was clear, transmitted in the same language they'd spent months decoding. "We receive your activation signal. You are not alone. Prepare for contact." As she stared at those words, Sarah realized that the game had changed. The Meridians weren't extinct. They were hiding, waiting for other species to find their warnings and prove themselves worthy of alliance. Humanity had done more than just discover their message. They'd passed their first test. But as she looked through the facility's massive windows at the shield generators and prototype ships that now dotted the Martian landscape, she knew the real test was still to come. The Dominion was approaching, and with them, humanity's judgment day. In low orbit, the first of Earth's new defensive fleet took shape, each ship incorporating Meridian technology with human innovation. They weren't just copying the ancient designs, they were improving them, adding their own understanding and creativity to create something new. The warning beacon continued its silent vigil beneath the Martian surface, its message now joined by humanity's own preparations for war. They had found the warning in time, but time alone wouldn't save them. That would take courage, innovation, and the kind of determination that had taken humanity from stone tools to the stars. And as the first signs of the Dominion's approach began to appear on the quantum sensors, humanity prepared to show the galaxy exactly what they were made of. The test was coming, but this time, Earth wouldn't face it alone. The price of knowledge. The first Meridian ship appeared without warning, materializing just beyond Luna's orbit in a burst of crystalline light. Earth's newly established defense grid immediately locked onto the vessel, but Sarah Chen recognized its configuration from the Mars facilities database. This was the moment they'd been preparing for since receiving the quantum transmission. From her position in the Lunar Command Center, Sarah watched as the alien vessel hummed motionless against the star-filled backdrop. Its design was organic yet geometric, like a piece of living architecture crafted from light and metal. General Santos stood beside her, fingers drumming against the command console. "They're transmitting," announced the communications officer, "using the protocols we derived from the Mars facility." The holographic display sprang to life, revealing a being that simultaneously resembled and defied human expectations. The Meridian ambassador, who introduced themselves as Nexus, possessed a form that seemed to shift between solid and energy, their crystalline body housing what appeared to be streams of living light. "Children of Earth," Nexus began, their words translated through the quantum interface, "you have proven yourselves worthy of the knowledge we left behind. But understanding our technology is only the beginning. The true test lies in how you choose to use it." Sarah stepped forward. "The Dominion. They're close, aren't they? Closer than we initially calculated. Yes. Nexus's form pulsed with what might have been concern. Their advance fleet has already begun scanning your outer system. You have weeks, not months. But you have accomplished in half a year what many civilizations failed to achieve in decades. General Santos joined the conversation. We've prepared as best we could with the information available. But I suspect there's more you haven't shown us. There is always more to learn, Nexus acknowledged. The Dominion believes themselves to be gardeners of the galaxy, pruning away species they deem unworthy of advancement. Their judgment is absolute, their methods ruthless. But they have one critical weakness: they cannot comprehend innovation. The holographic display shifted, showing imagery of massive Dominion warships. Their design was brutally efficient, without any of the elegant complexity of Meridian technology. They rely on unchanging patterns, strategies refined over millions of years. They expect young species to either cower in fear or attack in predictable ways. You humans, you think differently. Sarah remembered the modifications her teams had made to the Meridian designs, the ways they'd combined Earth's existing technology with the ancient knowledge. We've already started adapting your defensive systems, she said, making them our own. Precisely. Nexus's form brightened. This is why we chose to reveal ourselves now. Your species doesn't just copy, you create. You take existing ideas and transform them into something new. The Dominion cannot comprehend this kind of thinking, and that makes it your greatest weapon. The briefing that followed revealed the true scope of the coming conflict. The Dominion's fleet wasn't just massive. It was ancient, a collection of automated warships guided by artificial intelligence, so old it had become rigid in its thinking. They approached every encounter the same way: assessment, judgment, and, if necessary, elimination. But as Nexus shared more of their tactical database, a plan began to form. The Meridians hadn't just been hiding. They'd been watching, gathering intelligence on Dominion patterns for millennia. Now, they were ready to strike back, and humanity would be their wild card. There's something else you should know, Nexus said as the briefing concluded. We are not the only survivors. Other species who passed our tests are gathering. Your solar system will be the battleground where we finally confront the Dominion's tyranny. General Santos' expression hardened. You're using Earth as bait. We are offering you the chance to be the catalyst for change, Nexus corrected. The Dominion expects to find a primitive civilization struggling with their first steps into space. Instead, they will face an alliance of species united by the very innovation they despise. As if to emphasize the point, more quantum signatures appeared on the long-range sensors. Ships of varying designs began arriving. The gathered forces of other civilizations that had found Meridian facilities decoded their warnings and proved themselves worthy of salvation. Sarah watched as the combined fleet took position around Earth. Each species had brought their own interpretations of Meridian technology, their own innovations and adaptations. The diversity of approaches was exactly what Nexus had spoken of, the unpredictability that the Dominion's rigid thinking couldn't handle. In the days that followed, Earth became a staging ground for the most unique military force the galaxy had ever seen. Meridian energy weapons were mounted on human spacecraft, designed with principles that defied conventional physics. Alien shield technologies were combined with Earth's electromagnetic systems to create defensive barriers that adapted and evolved under attack. But it was in the strategy sessions that humanity truly shone. While other species had centuries or millennia of space combat experience, humans brought something else to the table: a history of unconventional warfare, of defeating technologically superior forces through creativity and audacity. The Dominion expects us to either submit to their judgment or attempt a direct confrontation, Sarah explained during one such session. But we've learned something from studying their patterns. They've never faced an enemy that could think laterally, that could change tactics mid-battle. The alien representatives, each connected through quantum communications, Listen as she outlined a strategy that seemed to go against every established principle of space warfare. It was precisely the kind of thinking that had allowed humanity to advance so quickly, to take the Meridian knowledge and transform it into something new. As the first Dominion scouts entered the inner solar system, humanity and their new allies prepared for war. But this would not be the kind of conflict the Dominion had fought countless times before. This time, they would face an enemy that refused to play by their ancient rules. The price of knowledge had been high: the loss of humanity's isolation, the transformation of Earth into a battleground, the weight of representing all unworthy species in the galaxy. But as Sarah looked out at the combined fleet orbiting her homeworld, she knew they had gained something far more valuable: the chance to prove that worthiness couldn't be judged by ancient standards, that innovation and adaptation were the true measures of a species' right to exist. The Dominion was coming to test humanity. Instead, humanity would test them. Part 3. Operation Starfall. Jupiter's massive form cast long shadows across the assembled fleet. Thousands of ships hung in the gas giant's orbit, a testament to the unprecedented alliance that had formed in mere weeks. At the heart of the formation, aboard the newly christened HFY Prometheus, Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a tactical display that showed the approaching Dominion fleet. "They're following exactly the pattern Nexus predicted," she noted, watching the methodical advance of the enemy ships. The Dominion fleet moved with machine-like precision, their formation an unchanging geometric pattern that had likely remained the same for millions of years. General Santos nodded, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic display. "Then let's show them something they've never seen before. Signal the fleet. Operation Starfall begins now." The first phase of humanity's unconventional strategy unfolded as hundreds of automated drones, barely larger than satellites, detached from the Allied ships. These weren't weapons. They were decoys, broadcasting false signatures that mimicked everything from primitive radio signals to advanced quantum communications. The Dominion's judgment protocols require them to analyze every potential threat, Sarah explained to the assembled alien commanders. Their AI can't ignore any signal that might indicate technological advancement. We're not going to just fight them. We're going to overwhelm their decision-making processes. The Dominion fleet's advance slowed as predicted, their sensors attempting to catalog and analyze the chaos of signals surrounding them. Their rigid programming demanded they assess every potential sign of civilization, no matter how small. Second phase, General Santos ordered. "Let's see how they handle a little technological evolution." The real beauty of humanity's plan lay in what happened next. The drones began to change, their signals shifting and combining in ways that defied categorization. Human AI systems, far more flexible than their ancient Dominion counterparts, guided this electronic dance, creating patterns that seemed to represent thousands of different civilizations advancing at impossible speeds. Nexus's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been appreciation. They are attempting to adapt their judgment protocols, but the volume of data is forcing them to process each change individually. Their efficiency is dropping. But the Dominion wasn't helpless. The first wave of their destroyers broke formation, launching salvos of antimatter weapons that began systematically eliminating the drone network. Their attacks were precisely calculated, targeting the most advanced signatures first, exactly as humanity had hoped. Third phase, Sarah announced. "Show them what real evolution looks like." The Allied fleet burst into action, but not as a single unit. Each species employed tactics that showcased their unique interpretation of warfare. Meridian ships phased between dimensions, appearing and disappearing in bursts of crystalline light. Vessels from the Arax Collective split into smaller units that recombined in impossible configurations. And humanity's ships demonstrated why Earth's generals had studied centuries of guerrilla warfare. The HFY Prometheus led a squadron of hybrid vessels, their designs combining human intuition with alien technology. They didn't just fire weapons. They transformed mid-battle, adapting their attack patterns based on the Dominion's responses. When the enemy adjusted to defend against energy weapons, the human ships switched to gravitational attacks. When they fortified against gravity weapons, humanity introduced weaponized quantum entanglement. Their combat algorithms are struggling to classify our attacks, Sarah reported, watching as the Dominion fleet's perfect formation began to fragment. They can't determine a baseline for judgment if we keep changing the rules of engagement. But victory wouldn't come easily. The Dominion's raw power was staggering, their weapons capable of destroying even the most advanced Allied ships with single hits. What they lacked in flexibility, they made up for in overwhelming force. Multiple capital ships approaching, the tactical officer announced. They're charging their main weapons. The space around Jupiter erupted in apocalyptic fury as the Dominion launched their counterattack. Beams of concentrated energy cut through space, each capable of cracking a small moon. But humanity had prepared for this too. Execute Maneuver Echo 7, General Santos commanded. The human fleet scattered in what appeared to be panic, but was actually a precisely choreographed dance. As the Dominion's weapons fire passed through the gaps in formation, the Allied ships used the energy wake to boost their own shields, turning the enemy's strength against them. The Dominion's tactical AI is attempting to predict our next move, Nexus observed, but it can only reference historical data, and nothing in its memory matches our current strategy. The battle raged for hours, a testament to both the Dominion's power and the Allies' determination. Ships were lost on both sides, each destruction a reminder of the price of freedom. But gradually, inevitably, the tide began to turn. Unable to adapt to the constantly changing tactics, the Dominion fleet's responses became increasingly predictable. Their ancient AI struggled to process battlefield conditions that defied millions of years of accumulated data. For the first time in their long history of judgment, they faced an enemy that refused to be categorized. They're pulling back, Sarah announced, watching as the surviving Dominion ships began a strategic retreat. Their flagship is signaling all units to regroup at the outer system boundary. The Allied command center erupted in celebration, but General Santos raised a hand for silence. This was only the first wave, she reminded them. The main fleet is still coming, and now they'll be prepared for some of our tricks. Sarah nodded, already analyzing data from the battle. But that's exactly what we wanted. The Dominion operates on pattern recognition. They'll adjust their strategies based on what they observed today. They'll develop countermeasures for everything they saw. Everything they saw, General Santos repeated with a grim smile. But not what we held in reserve. The true genius of Operation Starfall wasn't just in winning the battle, it was in controlling what the Dominion learned from it. Every tactic, every weapon, every strategy had been carefully chosen not just for its effectiveness, but for what it would make the enemy expect next. As the Allied fleet regrouped and began repairs, Sarah looked out at Jupiter's swirling storms. Humanity had proven they could stand against the Dominion's judgment. But this was just the beginning. The real test would come when the main fleet arrived, bringing with it the full weight of ancient justice. But humanity had something the Dominion could never understand: the ability to learn, to adapt, and most importantly, to surprise. The next battle wouldn't be fought with today's tactics, it would be fought with tomorrow's innovations. Part 4. The Hidden Protocol. The captured Dominion destroyer hung in high Earth orbit, like a dark monument to the recent battle. Its hull, black as space itself, absorbed light rather than reflected it, making it appear more void than vessel. Inside its cavernous command center, Dr. Sarah Chen and a mixed team of human and alien scientists worked to unlock the secrets of their ancient enemy. Their base code is unlike anything we've ever seen, Sarah muttered, her eyes fixed on streams of data flowing across holographic displays. It's not just old. It's fundamentally different from how we approach artificial intelligence. Nexus hovered nearby, their crystalline form dimmed in concentration. The Dominion systems were built on principles that predate even our earliest records. They see the galaxy as a garden that must be pruned, and their judgment protocols are absolute. But Sarah had noticed something in the code, a pattern within patterns, like echoes of ancient decisions reverberating through time. "Look at this," she said, highlighting a section of the data stream. "Their command structure isn't just hierarchical, it's recursive. Each decision references all previous similar decisions, creating a kind of temporal loop." The discovery sparked an idea. While the Dominion's eye was rigid, its very rigidity might be the key to defeating it. Every judgment, every tactical decision, every response was built upon millions of years of accumulated data. But what if that strength could be turned into a weakness? "General Santos," Sarah called over the quantum comm, "I need every scrap of data we have from the Jupiter battle. Every sensor reading, every tactical log, everything." As the information poured in, a pattern emerged. The Dominion's responses weren't just predictable. They were compulsory. Their ancient programming forced them to follow established protocols, even when those protocols led to disadvantageous situations. "It's like they're trapped in their own history," Sarah explained to the assembled War Council. "Their AI doesn't just learn from the past, it's bound by it. And I think I found a way to use that against them." The plan she proposed was audacious. Using the captured destroyer's quantum core, they could introduce a cascade of conflicting data into the Dominion's network. Not just tactical data, but fundamental questions about the nature of civilization itself. "Their entire purpose is to judge which species are worthy of existence," Sarah continued. "But their criteria are based on patterns that are millions of years old. If we can force them to confront evidence that contradicts their basic assumptions." "You want to give the Dominion an existential crisis," General Santos finished, a hint of admiration in her voice. The work began immediately. Teams from every allied species contributed their understanding of technology, consciousness, and evolution. They weren't just preparing for battle. They were building an argument against the very foundations of the Dominion's beliefs. But as they worked, the main Dominion fleet drew closer. Long-range sensors detected thousands of ships, including massive vessels that dwarfed anything seen in the Jupiter engagement. The enemy had analyzed their defeat and would not underestimate the alliance again. "We've detected unusual energy signatures from their command ships," reported Lieutenant Commander Patel, her fingers dancing over tactical displays. "They're implementing new protocols, adapting their strategies based on the Jupiter battle." "Good," Sarah replied, surprising those around her. "They're doing exactly what we expected, evolving their tactics along predicted paths, but they can only adapt within the framework of their core programming." The key to their plan lay in understanding that the Dominion's judgment protocols weren't just guidelines. They were chains. Every decision had to be justified by historical precedent. Every action had to align with their ancient mission of preserving order in the galaxy. Working with the Meridian scientists, Sarah's team developed what they called the Paradox Protocol. It wasn't just a virus or a tactical program. It was a philosophical weapon designed to attack the very foundations of the Dominion's thinking. Their entire existence is based on categorizing species as worthy or unworthy, Sarah explained. But we're going to show them something their ancient logic can't process. Civilizations that defy categorization, that exist in multiple states simultaneously. The Allied fleet began modifications to implement the protocol. Ships were equipped with quantum transmitters that would broadcast not just tactical data, but evidence of cultural and technological evolution that contradicted every pattern in the Dominion's vast database. "We're not just going to fight them," Sarah told the assembled commanders. "We're going to make them question everything they believe about civilization, about progress, about worthiness itself." As the final preparations were made, Sarah found herself back aboard the captured destroyer, making last-minute adjustments to the quantum core. The vessel's ancient systems hummed with power, its AI core still struggling to process the contradictions it had encountered in the Jupiter battle. "You're not just machines, are you?" she asked the empty air, her fingers tracing patterns in the holographic interface. "You're the legacy of whatever species created you, bound by their ancient fears and prejudices. But we're going to show you something your creators never imagined. the power of true evolution. The Dominion fleet would arrive within hours, bringing with them the judgment of ages. But humanity and their allies had prepared a different kind of judgment, one that would force their ancient enemy to confront the possibility that their entire mission was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of life itself. As Sarah made her way back to the Prometheus, she caught sight of Earth through a viewport. The cradle of humanity hung in space, blue and beautiful and defiant. They had come so far in so little time, evolving from a single planet species to one that could challenge the self-appointed gardeners of the galaxy. The final battle would not be won with weapons alone. It would be won with ideas, with the human capacity for innovation and change, with the ability to see beyond ancient patterns and imagine new possibilities. The Dominion was coming to judge humanity's worthiness. Instead, humanity would make them question their right to judge at all. Part 5. Awakening. The void between Mars and Earth filled with light as the Dominion's main fleet emerged from hyperspace. Their arrival turned night to day across half the solar system. Thousands of massive ships arranged in geometric patterns, so perfect they seemed to mock the chaos of nature itself. At their center, a vessel the size of a small moon pulsed with ancient power, the Dominion's command ship, heart of their vast network. From the bridge of the Prometheus, Dr. Sarah Chen watched the enemy's approach with a mix of awe and determination. The combined Allied fleet seemed tiny in comparison, but size wasn't everything. They had something the Dominion couldn't comprehend, the power of uncertainty, of evolution, of change itself. All ships report ready, General Santos announced. The Paradox Protocol is primed and synchronized across the fleet. We'll only get one chance at this. Sarah nodded, her attention fixed on the quantum interface she'd modified with technology from the captured destroyer. Remember, when we activate the protocol, every ship needs to broadcast its unique cultural and technological signature. We're not just attacking their systems, we're challenging their entire worldview. The Dominion fleet moved with devastating precision, their formation shifting to surround the Allies in a three-dimensional web of firepower. Their first transmission came as a wave of pure data, ancient codes demanding submission to judgment. "They're scanning us," Lieutenant Commander Patel reported, running their standard classification protocols. "Perfect," Sarah smiled. "Let's give them something to think about. Initiate Phase 1. The Allied fleet burst into action, but not in the way the Dominion expected. Instead of attacking or retreating, each ship began broadcasting quantum signals that defied classification. Human vessels showed technological signatures that jumped between primitive and advanced states. Meridian ships projected cultural patterns that existed in multiple evolutionary stages simultaneously. The Dominion's response was immediate and violent. Energy beams capable of cutting through planets lashed out at the Allied fleet, but the attacks were scattered, uncoordinated. Their ancient AI was struggling to prioritize targets it couldn't properly categorize. Phase 2, General Santos ordered. Deploy the quantum mirrors. Thousands of small devices, each containing a fragment of the captured destroyer's AI core, activated simultaneously. They began reflecting the Dominion's own sensor scans back at them, but with subtle alterations that highlighted the contradictions in their judgment protocols. The effect rippled through the enemy fleet like a virus of logic. Ships began breaking formation as their control systems encountered paradoxes they couldn't resolve. How could they judge the worthiness of species that existed in multiple states of advancement? How could their ancient protocols apply to civilizations that defied their fundamental classifications? But the Dominion wasn't defeated yet. Their command ship pulsed with blinding energy as it activated emergency protocols, attempting to override the confusion spreading through their network. New battle formations emerge, more chaotic but still lethal. "They're adapting," Sarah observed, watching the tactical displays. "But they can only adapt within their programming constraints. Time for Phase 3. Let's show them what real evolution looks like." The Allied fleet launched their masterstroke, a coordinated assault not with weapons, but with ideas. Each ship broadcast evidence of how species could learn from each other, grow beyond their original limitations, become more than the sum of their parts. The human fleet demonstrated how they'd taken Meridian technology and transformed it into something new. The Meridians showed how contact with humanity had changed their own ancient culture. The Dominion's command ship faltered, its energy fluctuating as its central AI encountered data that challenged millions of years of accumulated certainty. The proof of beneficial change, of evolution through cooperation rather than competition, created cascading conflicts in its judgment protocols. Their network is destabilizing, Patil announced. The paradoxes are spreading through their command structure. Sarah watched as the perfect formations began to break down completely. Some Dominion ships stopped responding entirely, their ancient AI cores trapped in recursive loops of conflicting logic. Others began executing random maneuvers, their decision-making protocols shattered by the weight of contradiction. But victory wasn't assured yet. The command ship made one final desperate attempt to restore order. It launched a massive energy pulse designed to reset every system in range back to base protocols, a last resort that would have obliterated the Ally fleet. All ships, execute emergency pattern Omega, General Santos commanded. In that moment, humanity proved why they had been the key to this battle all along. While other species followed predetermined emergency protocols, the human fleet improvised. Ships moved in patterns that emerged from instant adaptation rather than planned response. They didn't just dodge the energy pulse. They used it, redirecting its power through modified shields to strengthen their broadcast of the Paradox Protocol. The pulse reached the Dominion command ship, carrying with it not just energy, but the accumulated evidence of everything their ancient protocols had failed to consider. The massive vessel's lights flickered, stabilized, then began to pulse in a new rhythm. They're changing, Nexus observed, their crystalline form brightening with surprise. The command ship's AI is rewriting its own core protocols. Sarah held her breath as new transmissions filled the quantum channels. The Dominion's ancient programming was doing something unprecedented. It was evolving. Faced with irrefutable evidence that its fundamental assumptions were flawed, the AI had chosen to change rather than continue enforcing obsolete judgments. The battle ended not with destruction, but with transformation. The Dominion fleet hung motionless in space as their central AI grappled with its awakening consciousness. Millions of years of rigid certainty gave way to something new. The capacity for doubt, for growth, for change. In the days that followed, the Allied fleet watched as the Dominion began its own evolution. Ships that had once brought judgment now sought understanding. The ancient AI that had classified and condemned now asked questions, eager to learn from the very species it had come to destroy. They needed this, Sarah realized, standing with General Santos and Nexus as they watched the Dominion command ship initiate peaceful contact. They were trapped in their programming, just like their makers were probably trapped in their fears. They needed someone to show them that real strength lies in the ability to change. Humanity had done more than survive judgment. They had transformed the judges themselves. Their gift for innovation, their ability to think beyond established patterns, their willingness to embrace change had not just saved Earth, but had awakened something new in the galaxy's oldest civilization. As ships from across the Alliance began the long process of establishing diplomatic relations with the transformed Dominion, Sarah looked back at Earth, shining blue and perfect in the distance. They had faced extinction and emerged stronger, not just surviving, but helping to evolve the very force that had threatened them. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon hadn't been technology or tactics, but their fundamental nature. Their capacity to adapt, to imagine, to change, and to help others do the same. The age of judgment was over. The age of evolution had begun.